while Jefferson's goal may have been to make the government smaller, Jefferson's defining achievement of his first term in office was to make the country bigger. In 1803, France had just taken possession of Louisiana from Spain. Spain had gotten the Louisiana colony after the French and Indian War. Keep in mind, we're talking about big Louisiana. Louisiana as it was, not Louisiana as it is now, which is just the southernmost portion of Louisiana as it was known during colonial and early national times. And so the French still control Louisiana, and because of that, the French still control the mouth of the Mississippi. Now, Jefferson was someone who was concerned about self-reliance. It was important to him that people rely on themselves, rely on their own labor, and are not dependent. Jefferson had the same view for the United States of America. He had the view of an independent country. After all, this is the author of the Declaration of Independence. And as long as the Mississippi River, as the mouth of the Mississippi, was controlled by another country, the United States could never truly be independent because we need that river. This is something that is essential to American commerce. And so we need the river, we need to control the mouth of the river. And so Jefferson sent emissaries to France to make an offer for New Orleans, somewhere between $2 and $10 million, just try to get New Orleans from the French, which was the primary commercial center at the mouth of the Mississippi. Now, we remember from the XYZ affair that the French didn't typically treat our emissaries with the greatest amount of courtesy, and so our guys sat there for a while. But finally, one day, they were brought in, and they were offered another deal. They'd been thinking too small. The French decide that this whole Louisiana territory is worthless to them. If they sell New Orleans, what they're left with is a whole bunch of otherwise worthless land. But what if they could get rid of the whole thing and the Americans were willing to pay for it? And so the emissaries are offered to purchase the whole Louisiana territory for $15 million. 3 cents an acre. That's a deal. I mean, these guys were so excited by this, they didn't even take out their phones and text Jefferson before saying, of course, we'll take it. This is a no-brainer. This is common sense. This is something that can nearly double the size of the country. And so the treaty's negotiated, and then they go back to the United States. And for Jefferson, this is a dream. Remember, this is Jefferson who has this vision of an agrarian republic, of the virtuous, self-reliant farmer who is the backbone of true small r republican government. And so Jefferson, of course, we want this land. But there's a problem for Jefferson. And that problem is the Constitution. Because when we look into the Constitution, look around, and we're looking for, because remember, Jefferson is a strict constructionist. Jefferson's not a fan of the elastic clause, which allows the government to, stretch things a little bit to get necessary things done. And so Jefferson's poring over the Constitution and trying to find out, trying to buy this land. Where is it in here that says I can add land? And so Jefferson keeps looking around and he finds something. The president shall have the power, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. Now, there's something. The treaty-making power. The president is able to make treaties. And if we're getting this land from France, that's a treaty, right? Done. That's constitutional. But, of course, we had to employ just a little bit of loose construction. It's not like we're trying to just utterly abuse the Constitution here, but we are stretching it out just a bit to do something that is undoubtedly in the best interest of the country. After all, why would any country not add land if they had the opportunity? And so Jefferson compromises his principles just a bit in order to accomplish the greater good. After all of that land there, great farmland, that's a lot of virtue for 3 cents an acre. Virtue doesn't come that cheap on the open market. This is a deal. And so, through compromising one principle, Jefferson upholds the principle of agrarianism. Keep in mind, it doesn't mean that Jefferson's a hypocrite just because he compromised one principle. He found a principle that was greater. If there's anything Jefferson loved more than the Constitution, it was agriculture. And so Jefferson's achievement is this Louisiana Purchase. Now, the only thing is, he knew he was buying a lot of land, but he didn't really know what he was buying. And so the first thing Jefferson has to do is get somebody to explore this land. And this is the basis for the Lewis and Clark expedition. And so Lewis and Clark are tasked with exploring this new Louisiana Purchase. And what they're told to do is, meet all of the Indian tribes. They're given little medals with Jefferson's face on them to give the Indian chiefs and as gestures of friendship. And so explore the land, meet the Indian tribes, make notes, bring me a couple things back. Jefferson had a lot of cool stuff in his house that Lewis and Clark had brought back to him. I'm sure Jefferson would have gone with them if he thought he could get away with it. But one more thing Jefferson says. Explorers have tried to find the Fountain of Youth, El Dorado, the cities of gold. But there's one more thing that we haven't really looked for. A Northwest Passage. If you could find a river that goes from the Mississippi all the way to the Pacific Ocean, that would be really cool, because then we could navigate without going around South America. So look for that. Look for this Northwest Passage. They didn't find it. It doesn't exist. Close that one up with the Fountain of Youth, El Dorado, and the cities of gold, and all of that good stuff. But even though they didn't find the Northwest Passage, the Lewis and Clark expedition was still a success because they were able to explore the land and see what was purchased. Of course, they couldn't have done this without their Indian guide, Sacagawea, which most students have learned about in elementary school. However, bet you didn't know this little guy. Got that little baby there on the coin. What's the baby's name? A little bit of trivia for you. Baby's name is Jean-Baptiste. Sacagawea was married to a Frenchman, and this was a common name. Of course, if you asked me my name and I said, I'm John the Baptist, you'd probably look at me funny or laugh. Nobody names their kid that, but that was a very common French name at the time. Your kid's born, name him after a saint. Why not John the Baptist? So, tons of French kids named John the Baptist. So when you see that coin again, there's Sacagawea, and you can say, oh, there's little John Baptiste. And so Jefferson's first term in office is a great success. But it is not without trouble. And so in the next segment, we're going to talk about the Marshall Court, followed by the trials of the Jeffersonians.